Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The Savannah sunset bled crimson across the sky, painting the cobblestone streets and moss-draped oaks in a glow that felt like a promise or a warning. Zara Tate leaned back in her office chair, the faint hum of a ceiling fan stirring the humid air. Her desk was a chaos of fabric swatches, floral catalogs, and Polaroids of happy couples, but her eyes were fixed on the laptop screen. An email stared back at her, the kind that could make or break a career. Evelyn Pierce, high-profile client, requesting a wedding at the old Whitfield Plantation substantial budget dream gig. Her assistant Luce had forwarded it with a string of exclamation points and a note. "This is the one." Boss. Zara's fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to reply, until she saw the groom's name. Finn Carver. Her breath caught sharp as a splinter. Finn, the man who'd walked out of her life 6 years ago, leaving her on Tybee Beach with nothing but a half-hearted apology and the echo of his footsteps. She could still feel the sand under her bare feet, the moonlight silvering his brown hair as he kissed her one last time, promising they'd find a way. He'd lied. He'd chosen his tech startup dreams in Seattle over her, over them. And now he was back a billionaire about to marry someone else. "Damn you, Finn," she muttered, reaching for the bourbon bottle on her shelf. She poured a finger into a chipped mug, the amber liquid catching the dying light. The burn of it grounded her, but it didn't erase the memory of his voice, low and warm, or the way his hands had felt on her skin. Zara Tate wasn't the type to dwell hell. She'd built Tate's elegance into Savannah's top event planning business from the ashes of that heartbreak. But this was a gut punch. Her phone buzzed, Luce's name flashing. "You see that email? Zara Whitfield Plantation girl. We're talking 6 figures, maybe more. You in?" Zara swirled the bourbon, staring at the screen. She could delete it. One click, and Finn Carver would stay a ghost. But something stopped her pride. Maybe, or the stubborn streak her Grandma Maeve always said would get her in trouble. She wanted him to see her now, the woman she'd become, not the heartbroken girl he'd left behind. "Yeah, Luce," she said, voice steady. "Set up a meeting I'm in." The Whitfield Plantation was a vision straight out of a southern fairy tale, its white columns glowing under the late afternoon sun, the Savannah River shimmering like liquid gold behind it. Zara moved through the bustling engagement party with the precision of a conductor, her red silk dress hugging her curves, her curls pinned loose to catch the breeze. She checked the champagne flutes, adjusted a magnolia centerpiece, and flashed a smile at the catering staff. Tate's elegance didn't miss a beat, and neither did she. But then, he walked in. Finn Carver stepped through the double doors, and the world tilted. He was taller than she remembered, broader, his navy vest tailored to perfection. A far cry from the faded hoodies he used to wear. His brown hair was still a little messy, curling at the edges, and those green eyes. God, those eyes locked onto her like they could see through every wall she'd built. A woman clung to his arm, her auburn hair gleaming, her smile sharp as a blade. Evelyn Pierce. Zara guessed the kind of woman who belonged in Finn's new world of private jets and penthouses. Zara forced her gaze away, focusing on a tray of shrimp and grits passing by. She was a professional. Damn it! She'd planned weddings for senators, rappers, even a minor royal once Finn Carver was just another client. But when she handed out business cards to the guests, her fingers brushed his, and a jolt shot through her like static on a summer night. His hand lingered a second too long, his thumb grazing her knuckle, and she yanked back heart-pounding Zara. His voice was low, familiar, like a song she'd tried to forget. Zara Tate. She met his gaze chin high, her smile cool as the river breeze. "Mr. Carver, welcome to Tate's Elegance. I'll be handling your wedding personally." She extended her hand, professional, distant, even as her pulse thundered. Let's make it a day to remember. He shook her hand, his grip firm, his eyes searching hers. I didn't know you're doing this. Best in Savannah, she said, pulling her hand free. Congratulations to you and Miss Pierce. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check the band. She turned heels, clicking on the hardwood, but she felt his stare burning into her back. The party swirled around her laughter, clinking glasses, the soulful hum of a sax from the band. But all she could hear was the echo of Finn's voice 6 years ago saying, I'll come back for you, Zara. I swear. The night wore on, the air growing thick with humidity and the sweet tang of magnolia blossoms. Zara was in the garden, checking the string lights draped over the oaks, when she heard footsteps on the gravel path. She turned, expecting Luce or a caterer, but it was Finn alone. His tie loosened, a glass of bourbon in hand. The golden glow of the lanterns caught the planes of his face, making him look both older and impossibly the same. Zara, he said, stopping a few feet away like he was afraid to get closer. Can we talk? She crossed her arms, the silk of her dress rustling softly. We're talking now, Finn. What's up? Need more oysters for the guests? He didn't smile. I didn't know you'd be here if I had. You'd have picked another planner. She cut in, voice sharp. Don't worry, I'm a professional. Your wedding's in good hands. That's not what I meant. He stepped closer, the gravel crunching under his polished shoes. The music from the house drifted out, a slow, sultry soul tune, the kind that made you want to sway or cry. Seeing you. It's like no time's passed. Zara's throat tightened, but she held her ground. A lot's passed, Finn. 6 years. You built an empire. I built a life. Let's not pretend we're still those kids on Tybee Beach. His jaw clenched and he set his glass on a stone bench, the bourbon catching the lantern light. I never forgot you, Zara. Not a day goes by. Stop! She raised a hand, her bangles jingling softly. You don't get to say that, not when you're about to put a ring on someone else's finger. The air between them crackled heavy with the weight of unsaid things. The soul song swelled the singer's voice raw and pleading, and Finn closed the distance, standing so close she could smell his cologne, sandalwood and cedar. The same damn scent he'd worn back then. The lanterns cast shadows across his face, flickering like the emotions in his eyes. Zara. He murmured, his voice a low rumble, like thunder rolling in from the river. He reached out his fingers, brushing her wrist, slow and deliberate, his thumb tracing the pulse point where her heart betrayed her. The touch was electric, sending a shiver up her spine, and she hated how her body responded, leaning ever so slightly toward him. The music wrapped around them, the saxophone's wail matching the ache in her chest. Finn, don't, she whispered, but her voice wavered and she didn't pull away. The leaves above rustled in the breeze, a soft counterpoint to the music, like the world was holding its breath. His hand slid up her arm, fingers grazing the bare skin above her elbow, and she felt the heat of his touch through the thin silk of her dress. His breath was warm against her ear, a slow exhale that sent goosebumps racing across her neck. I can't pretend you're just a stranger, he said, his voice rough, like he was fighting himself as much as her. You're still everything, Zara. Her heart pounded, drowning out the music, and for a moment she was back on that beach, his lips on hers, the moonlight turning the world to silver. His face was inches away, his eyes locked on hers, and she felt the pull, like gravity, like fate. His thumb brushed her cheek, a feather-light touch, and she tilted her head, their lips so close she could taste the bourbon on his breath. But then footsteps crunched on the gravel and Malik's voice cut through the haze. Zara, you out here. Chile, Luce needs you for the cake cutting. Zara jerked back, her bangles clinking, her breath ragged. Finn's hand dropped his expression, a mix of longing and frustration. She smoothed her dress, forcing her voice steady. "You don't get to do this, Finn. You made your choice 6 years ago. Live with it." She turned, striding toward the house, the music fading behind her. But her skin still burned where he'd touched her, and her heart. Damn, her heart felt like it was breaking all over again. Inside, the party was in full swing, guests laughing over plates of low-country boil, the band kicking into a livelier tune. Zara threw herself into work, directing servers, adjusting table settings, anything to keep her mind off Finn. But every time she glanced his way, he was watching her, his eyes following her like she was the only person in the room. Evelyn clung to his arm, her laughter bright, but Zara saw the way Finn's smile didn't reach his eyes. Malik found her near the dessert table, his dreads pulled back, his leather jacket out of place among the sequins and suits. "You okay, Z?" he asked, handing her a glass of sweet tea. "Saw you out there with Mr. Billionaire. Looked intense." Zara sipped the tea, the sugar grounding her. "It's nothing." "Malik?" "Just old ghosts." He raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Ghosts? Don't look at you like that, Chile. Be careful. You work too hard to let some tech bro mess with your head." She nodded, but her eyes drifted to Finn, now talking to a group of guests. He laughed at something Evelyn said, but his gaze flicked to Zara, and for a second the room fell away. Malik was right. She'd rebuilt her life brick by brick after Finn left. She wasn't that girl anymore, the one who'd cried herself to sleep clutching his old t-shirt. But why did her heart still race when he said her name? Later, Zara stood on the River Street Bridge, the party over the city quiet, except for the hum of cicadas and the lapping of the river below. The lights of Savannah twinkled, reflecting on the water like scattered stars. She wrapped her arms around herself, the night air cool against her skin. Finn was back, but he wasn't hers. Not anymore. He belonged to Evelyn, to a world of boardrooms and private jets, a world that had never had a place for her. But that moment in the garden, his fingers on her wrist, his voice in her ear, it felt like a spark that could set her whole world ablaze. She'd spent 6 years telling herself she was over him, but one touch, one look, and she was right back on that beach, believing in forever. "Get it together, Zara," she muttered, tossing a pebble into the river. She had a job to do, a reputation to protect Finn. Carver was a client, nothing more. But as she walked home, the soul song from the party echoed in her mind, its lyrics about love and loss cutting deeper than she'd ever admit. If your heart's ever skipped a beat for someone from your past, drop your story in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button to follow Zara and Finn's roller coaster ride. Can love heal old scars, or will it tear them apart again? Y'all, let's find out together. The Memphis skyline glittered against the night, the Mississippi River, a dark ribbon reflecting the neon glow of Beale Street. Zara Tate stood outside the Peabody Hotel, her clipboard clutched like a shield, the humid air heavy with the scent of BBQ and the distant wail of a blues guitar. She'd been dreading this trip since Savannah, since that moment in the garden when Finn Carver's touch had set her skin on fire. 1 week later, and she was still shaking it off, or trying to focus. "Zara," she muttered, adjusting her silk blouse, the cream fabric cool against her skin. This was just another job scout, a wedding venue, nail the client's vision, keep Tate's elegance on top. But the client was Finn, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw his green eyes, felt his thumb on her wrist, heard his voice saying her name like a prayer. Damn him for making her feel like that girl on Tybee Beach again, full of hope and heartbreak. Her phone buzzed, Luce's voice bursting through. "Yo, Zara, you at the hotel yet? Evelyn's got a whole list of demands, fireworks over the river, a custom cocktail menu. The works. You good?" Zara forced a laugh, leaning against a wrought iron lamppost. "Good as I'll ever be, Luce." Send me the list and tell Malik I'm hitting his show tonight. Need some soul to keep me sane. Malik's gonna love that." Lou said, her grin audible. "But, heads up, Finn and Evelyn are already there. Just watch yourself. Okay?" Zara's stomach twisted. Noted. Talk later. She hung up her reflection, staring back from the hotel's glass doors. She looked every inch the professional curls swept into a low bun, gold hoops catching the streetlights, but inside she was a mess. Finn wasn't just a client. He was a ghost, a memory, a mistake she'd sworn never to repeat. The Peabody's ballroom was a study in southern grandeur. Crystal chandeliers, mahogany paneling, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the river. Zara moved through it with her usual precision, marking sightlines for the ceremony, noting where the band could set up. Evelyn Pierce was in full boss mode, her auburn hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, her voice crisp as she rattled off demands. "I want the fireworks timed to the first dance," she said, tapping her tablet, "and the signature cocktail. Something with bourbon, but not too sweet. Finn, what do you think?" Finn, standing by a window, barely glanced up. "Sounds fine," he said, his voice flat, his eyes fixed on Zara as she measured a table. She felt his stare like a physical weight, and it took everything not to meet it. "Keep it professional." "Zara." She scribbled a note about table linens, her pen digging into the paper. Evelyn's phone rang and she stepped out, leaving Zara and Finn alone in the cavernous room. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of air conditioning and the distant pulse of Beale Street's music. Zara kept her back to him, pretending to inspect a chandelier, but she heard his footsteps, slow and deliberate, crossing the polished floor. "Zara," he said, close enough that she caught the cedar and sandalwood scent of his cologne. "Can we talk about what happened?" She turned arms, crossed her clipboard, a barrier between them. "What's there to talk about, Finn? You got handsy in a garden, and I shut it down. End of story." His jaw tightened, but his eyes didn't waver. "It wasn't just a moment for me. Seeing you again, it's like everything I've built doesn't mean a damn thing." Zara's laugh was sharp, cutting through the quiet. Don't get to waltz back into my life all billionaire swagger and act like you didn't choose your empire over me. You made your bed, Finn. Lie in it." He stepped closer. His vest, unbuttoned, the white shirt beneath stretched taut across his chest. "I keep a picture of us in my wallet," he said, voice low like a confession. "From that dive bar in Savannah, the one with the jukebox that only played Otis Redding. You were laughing, head thrown back, and I thought, that's the girl I'm gonna marry." Her breath hitched, the memory slamming into her. The sticky bar counter, the taste of cheap beer, Finn's arm around her waist as they swayed to "Try a little tenderness." She shoved the image away, her nails biting into her palms. "You're marrying Evelyn," she said, voice steady despite the storm inside. "That picture's just a souvenir from a life you threw away." Finn opened his mouth to reply, but the door swung open and Evelyn breezed back in her heels, clicking. "Sorry about that," she said, oblivious to the tension. "Zara, can we discuss the floral arches now?" Zara nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course, Ms. Pierce. Let's do it." But as she followed Evelyn to a table, she felt Finn's eyes on her, and her skin prickled with the ghost of his words. The ballroom meeting dragged on, Evelyn's demands growing more extravagant by the minute. By the time Zara escaped, the sun had set and Beale Street was alive with music and neon. She headed to Blues City Cafe, where Malik was performing the promise of his soulful voice, a lifeline after the chaos of Finn. The club was packed, the air thick with the smell of fried catfish and beer. The stage lit by a single spotlight. Malik stood under it, his dreads loose, his voice raw and powerful as he sang a cover of Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Gonna Come." Zara slid into a booth, ordering a whiskey sour to steady her nerves. She was halfway through her drink when Finn walked in alone, his vest swapped for a leather jacket that made him look too much like the boy she'd loved. He spotted her and made his way over, ignoring the curious glances from the crowd. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, already sliding into the booth. She raised an eyebrow, sipping her drink. "You're a long way from the Peabody Carver, slumming it." He grinned, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "Heard Malik's the best in Memphis. Figured I'd see what the fuss is about." Zara snorted, but her heart wasn't in it. The music pulsed around them, Malik's voice weaving through the chatter, and Finn's knee brushed hers under the table, a fleeting touch that sent a spark through her. She shifted away, focusing on the stage, but Finn leaned closer, his voice barely audible over the music. "I meant what I said. Zara, that picture, it's not just a memory. It's a reminder of the biggest mistake I ever made." She turned their faces inches apart, his green eyes catching the dim light of the club. The air felt charged like the moment before a storm. "You don't get to rewrite history," she said, her voice low. "You left me, Finn. You chose Seattle, your startup, your damn dream, and now you're engaged. So why are you here, messing with my head?" He didn't answer, just reached into his wallet and pulled out a creased photo, sliding it across the table. There they were, frozen in time. Zara laughing, her head tilted back, Finn's arm around her, his smile brighter than the neon signs outside. Her throat tightened and she pushed the photo back, but her fingers lingered on it, the paper warm from his pocket. The song ended, the crowd erupting in applause, and Zara used the noise to stand her chair, scraping the floor. "I've got a job to do," she said, avoiding his eyes. "Stay out of my way, Finn." But he caught her hand as she turned his grip firm, his fingers wrapping around hers like they belonged there. The contact was a shock, his skin rough against her smooth palm, and she felt the calluses on his fingertips, a reminder of the boy who'd once helped her paint her old apartment. Her pulse raced, and she hated how her body betrayed her, how her hand didn't pull away. "Zara," he said, standing now so close she could feel the heat of him. The club's lights pulsed red and blue, and the opening chords of a new song, a fast, gritty blues number, filled the air. His thumb pressed against her knuckles, a slow, deliberate stroke that sent a shiver up her arm. She felt the texture of his jacket under her other hand, the leather cool and supple, and for a moment she was back in that dive bar, dancing with him, believing they'd never end. "Finn, let go," she said. But her voice was a whisper, swallowed by the music. His fingers tightened, and he pulled her closer, just enough that their bodies brushed her silk blouse, grazing his shirt. The friction was electric, her skin tingling where his hand held hers, and she felt the strength in his grip, the barely restrained want. His breath hitched a soft sound, lost in the guitar's wail, and she knew he felt it too. The pull, the ache, the danger. Malik's voice cut through, sharp and soulful, and Zara yanked her hand free, stepping back, her chest heaving. "You're engaged," she snapped, loud enough to turn heads. "You don't get to do this." Finn's face fell, but he didn't follow as she stormed toward the exit, the music chasing her out into the night. The air was cooler now, the neon signs blurring through the tears she refused to let fall. She leaned against a brick wall, the rough texture grounding her, and took a shaky breath. Finn was a client, nothing more, but her hand still burned where he'd touched her, and that photo, God, that photo was seared into her mind. Malik found her later, after his set, his guitar case slung over his shoulder. They sat on a bench by the river, the Mississippi's current a steady hum under the city's pulse. "You want to talk about it?" he asked, offering her a sip from his flask. Zara took it, the whiskey sharp on her tongue. "Finn showed up at the club, had the nerve to pull out an old picture of us like that fixes anything." Malik whistled low. "Man's got balls, I'll give him that. But you ain't that girl anymore. Z, you're Zara Tate, Queen of Savannah running the show. Don't let him drag you back." She nodded, but her heart wasn't convinced. Malik's song had torn her open, its lyrics about love and redemption hitting too close to home. She'd spent 6 years building walls, but Finn's touch, his voice, that damn picture, they were chipping away at her piece by piece. "I'm fine," she lied, handing back the flask. "Just need to get through this wedding cash, the check, and move on." Malik gave her a look, the kind that saw right through her. Sure, chilly, but love's got a way of sneaking up on you. Watch your back. Zara stared at the river, its surface catching the city lights, and wondered if she could outrun the spark Finn had reignited. She'd survived him once. She could do it again, but as she walked back to her hotel, the blues song echoed in her head, and her hand still tingled where he'd held it, a reminder that some ghosts were harder to bury than others. The ferry to Nantucket rocked gently on the Atlantic, the salt spray kissing Zara Tate's face as she leaned against the railing. The island loomed ahead, its gray-shingled cottages and windswept dunes a world away from the sticky heat of Savannah or the neon pulse of Memphis. She adjusted her scarf, the silk catching the sea breeze, and tried to focus on the job, scouting a beachfront venue for Finn and Evelyn's wedding. But her mind kept drifting to Memphis, to Finn's hand on hers, the creased photo he'd carried like a talisman. She'd spent 2 weeks dodging his calls, ignoring the texts that lit up her phone at midnight. "Zara, we need to talk." "Please?" She hadn't replied. She couldn't afford to. "Yo, Zara, you good?" "Luce," Rivera's voice cut through the hum of the ferry's engine. Her assistant stood beside her, sunglasses perched on her head, a clipboard stuffed with vendor contracts. "You've been staring at the water like it's going to tell you the meaning of life." Zara forced a grin, tucking a curl behind her ear, just soaking in the view, Luce. "This place is like a postcard." "Uh-huh," Luce said, raising an eyebrow. "Or you're stressing about Mr. Billionaire. I saw him at the dock, looking all brooding and fine. You sure you can handle this solo gig with him?" "I've handled worse," Zara said, but her stomach twisted. Evelyn had cancelled at the last minute some urgent meeting in Boston, leaving Zara and Finn to tour the venue alone. The thought of being stuck with him, no buffer, made her want to jump overboard. "Let's just get this done." "Yeah," Luce nodded, but her eyes said she wasn't buying it. "All right, boss, but if you need me to fake a catering emergency, just say the word." Zara laughed, the sound swallowed by the waves. She needed more than an emergency to escape. Finn Carver. The Sconset Bluff venue was a slice of paradise, its white tent pitched against a backdrop of dunes and crashing surf. The late afternoon sun hung low, gilding the sand and casting long shadows from the beach roses. Zara moved through the space with her usual efficiency, snapping photos, jotting notes about lighting and guest flow. Finn trailed behind his linen shirt, rolled to the elbows. His silence louder than the ocean. She felt his presence like a storm cloud, heavy and inevitable. "This place is beautiful," he said finally, stopping by a driftwood arch where the ceremony would be. "You think it's right for the wedding?" Zara kept her eyes on her tablet, tapping out a note about table placements. "It's perfect. Romantic exclusive. Great for photos. Evelyn's gonna love it." "Evelyn," he repeated, his voice flat, like the name was a weight. He stepped closer, the sand crunching under his loafers. "Zara, can we stop pretending this is just business?" She froze, her stylus hovering over the screen. "It is business, Finn. You're a client, I'm doing my job." "Your job?" He echoed, a bitter edge to his words. "Is that why you won't look at me? Why you've been dodging me since Memphis?" She spun to face him, her scarf fluttering in the wind. "I'm dodging you because you're engaged, Finn. Because you don't get to show up with old photos and sweet talk, and act like you didn't break my heart." His face tightened, but he didn't back down. "I know I hurt you. I was young, stupid, chasing a dream I thought would fix everything. But it didn't. Nothing's felt right since I left you. Zara's chest ached, but she shook her head, stepping back. You don't get to say that now. You're building a life with Evelyn. Go live it. Before he could reply, a gust of wind whipped across the beach, carrying the sharp tang of rain. Dark clouds rolled in fast and ominous, and a crack of thunder echoed over the waves. Shit, Zara muttered, glancing at her phone. The forecast hadn't mentioned a storm. We need to get inside. The venue staff ushered them to a nearby guest house, a cozy cedar-shingled cottage just past the dunes. By the time they reached it, the sky had opened, rain pounding the roof like a drum. Zara shook water from her scarf, her blouse clinging to her skin, while Finn ran a hand through his wet hair, his shirt translucent in the dim light. The staff apologized, saying the ferry was grounded until the storm passed. They were stuck, just the two of them, in a house that felt too small for the history between them. The guest house was warm, a single room with a stone fireplace and a worn leather couch. Zara stood by the window watching the storm lash the sea, the lighthouse beam slicing through the rain. Finn knelt by the hearth, coaxing a fire to life, the crackle of kindling filling the silence. The glow of the flames danced across the walls, casting shadows that seemed to move with their unspoken words. "You want coffee?" Finn asked, standing his voice softer now. "There's a pot in the kitchen." Zara shook her head, her arms crossed. "I'm fine. Let's just wait this out." He sighed, leaning against the mantel, the firelight carving his features into sharp relief. "Zara, I need you to hear me. I messed up. I thought success would fill the hole in me, but it didn't. You did. You always did." Her throat tightened, but she kept her eyes on the window, the rain blurring the world outside. "You had 6 years to figure that out, Finn. Why now? Because I'm convenient. Because you're bored." He crossed the room in 2 strides, stopping just short of her. "Because seeing you again made it clear I've been running from the truth. I love you, Zara. I never stopped." The words hit like a wave, crashing over her carefully built walls. She turned her eyes blazing. "You don't get to say that you left me, Finn. I begged you to stay, to try long-distance anything, and you walked away without looking back." "I looked back," he said, his voice breaking. "Every damn day I looked back in Seattle, in boardrooms and empty hotel rooms. I saw you in every sunset, every song on the radio. And then I found out you were planning my wedding, and it was like fate was giving me a second chance." Zara's laugh was brittle, her hands trembling. "Fate. You're engaged to Evelyn. You don't get a second chance when you're promised to someone else." He stepped closer, the firelight flickering in his eyes, turning them a deeper green. "I funded a gala arts center in Savannah," he said, his voice low, urgent. "It's not public yet, but it's real. I did it because of you, because of what you taught me about roots, about meaning. I didn't tell you, because I didn't want you to think I was trying to buy you back. But I need you to know I'm not the man who left you." Her breath caught the revelation shaking her. A gala arts center. That wasn't just money. It was a piece of her soul, her heritage, something she'd dreamed of since she was a kid, listening to her Grandma Maeve's stories. She searched his face, looking for a lie, but all she saw was raw, unguarded truth. "Finn," she whispered, her voice cracking. The storm roared outside the lighthouse beam, sweeping through the window, bathing them in a fleeting glow. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming, and she didn't back away. The firelight played across his jaw, his throat, the damp shirt clinging to his shoulders, and she felt the pull, like the tide dragging her under. He reached for her, his hand hovering near her cheek, giving her a chance to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her skin, slow and reverent, tracing the curve of her jaw like he was memorizing her. The light from the fire and the lighthouse wove together, painting her skin in gold and silver, and she shivered not from the cold, but from the warmth of his touch. "Zara," he murmured, his voice a soft plea, and he stepped closer, their bodies inches apart. The room seemed to shrink, the storm and the firelight cocooning them. His thumb grazed her lower lip, a feather-light touch that sent a spark through her, and she tilted her head, drawn to him, despite every warning in her heart. The lighthouse beam swept past again, illuminating his eyes, and she saw the same longing she felt, the same ache. He leaned in his breath, warm against her temple, and his lips brushed her forehead, then her cheek, slow and deliberate, like he was savoring every second. Her hands found his chest, fingers curling into his shirt, the damp fabric cool under her palms. The firelight flickered, casting their shadows on the wall, and she felt his heartbeat steady and strong, grounding her, even as she spiraled. His lips hovered over hers so close she could taste the salt on his breath, and the world narrowed to this moment, this light, this man. But then the memory of Evelyn's smile, her ring glinting in Savannah, crashed through her. Zara pulled back her hands, dropping her eyes. "Wet, I can't," she said, her voice raw. "You're hers, Finn, not mine." He stood frozen, his chest heaving, the firelight dimming as a log collapsed. "Zara." "I know." She turned to the window, the rain a steady drumbeat. "We're done here." The storm eased by morning, the sky clearing to a pale blue. Zara packed her notes, avoiding Finn's gaze as they boarded the ferry back to the mainland. He tried to speak, but she cut him off, her voice cold. "Let's keep this professional. Finn, that's all this is." He nodded, his jaw tight, but his eyes followed her, heavy with unspoken words. As the island faded behind them, Zara called her grandma, Maeve needing her wisdom to anchor her. Maeve's voice was warm, crackling through the phone. "Love's a tricky thing, baby girl," she said. "I let mine go once, back when the world told me I couldn't have him. Don't let fear make your choices." Zara hung up her heart, a tangle of hope and dread. Finn's revelation about the Gala Arts Center had shaken her, made her see him in a new light. But he was still engaged, still tethered to a world she didn't belong to. She leaned against the ferry railing, the sea breeze cool on her skin, and wondered if she could trust him or herself. The French Quarter pulsed with life, its narrow streets alive with the scent of beignets, the clink of bourbon glasses, and the wail of a trumpet spilling from a corner bar. Zara Tate navigated the crowd, her heels clicking on the uneven cobblestones, her navy blazer sharp against the chaos of New Orleans. She was here for a charity gala at the old Ursuline convent, a fundraiser Finn's company was sponsoring to promote the Gala Arts Center he'd told her about in Nantucket. The job was high stakes, her biggest yet, but all she could think about was Finn's confession, his lips brushing her cheek in that storm-lit guest house, and the way her heart had betrayed her. "Zara, you look like you're about to murder someone," Luz Rivera said, catching up with her outside the convent's iron gates. Her assistant's curls bounced as she adjusted her earrings, her red dress a splash of color against the stone walls. "This gig's gonna put Tate's elegance on the map. Why the long face?" Zara forced a smile, smoothing her blazer. "Just focused, Luz." "We've got a lot riding on this." Luz raised an eyebrow, unconvinced, "Or you're still reeling from Nantucket. I heard about the storm, the cozy little guest house, you and Finn playing house, spill girl." "There's nothing to spill," Zara said. Her voice clipped. "He's a client. I'm doing my job." "Sure, and I'm the queen of Mardi Gras," Luz teased, but her eyes softened. "Just be careful." "Okay, Finn's got a way of getting under your skin." Zara nodded, but Luz's words hit too close to home. Finn had gotten under her skin, burrowed deep with his talk of love and redemption. The Gala Arts Center was proof he'd changed, or so he claimed, but he was still engaged to Evelyn Pierce, and Zara wasn't about to be anyone's second choice. The convent's courtyard was a vision of elegance strung with fairy lights, tables draped in white linen, and a jazz quartet filling the air with a sultry melody. Zara moved through the setup like a general directing florists, checking the sound system, ensuring every detail was flawless. Guests in tuxedos and sequined gowns began to arrive, their laughter mingling with the clink of champagne flutes. Finn was there too, in a black suit that hugged his frame, his green eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. She turned away, focusing on a tray of crawfish, étouffée, but her skin prickled under his gaze. Evelyn was by his side, her auburn hair swept into an elegant updo, her emerald dress catching the light. She was all smiles, shaking hands with donors, but Zara caught the way her eyes lingered on Finn, sharp and assessing. She knows something. Zara thought, her stomach twisting. The memory of Nantucket, of Finn's hand on her face, felt like a secret too big to hide. The gala went off without a hitch, the quartet transitioning to a lively rendition of When the Saints Go Marching In as guests danced under the stars. Zara was adjusting a centerpiece when Evelyn approached, her heels silent on the flagstone. Zara, a word she said, her voice smooth but edged with steel. Zara straightened her heart, kicking up a notch. Of course, Miss Pierce. Everything to your liking. Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. The event's perfect, but I'm not here to talk about flowers. She gestured to a quiet corner by the convent wall where the fairy lights cast a soft glow. Walk with me. Zara followed, her palms clammy. The jazz slowed to a mournful ballad, the saxophone's wail curling through the air like smoke. Evelyn stopped, her emerald dress shimmering, and fixed Zara with a look that could cut glass. I found an email, she said, her voice low. From Finn to you, dated 6 years ago. He was in Seattle begging you to take him back. He never sent it, but he kept it. Why would he do that? Zara's breath caught her mind racing. An unsent email. She hadn't known, hadn't even suspected, I don't know, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos inside. That was a long time ago, Ms. Pierce. Whatever was between me and Finn ended when he left Savannah. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her manicured nails tapping her clutch. Don't play coy. Zara, I see the way he looks at you, the way he lights up when you're in the room. I'm not blind, and I'm not a fool. Zara's temper flared, but she kept her tone even. I'm not here to steal your fiancé. Evelyn, I'm here to do my job. If you have a problem with Finn, talk to him. Evelyn's laugh was brittle, her gaze cutting. Oh, I will. But let me be clear. Finn's world is mine now. Boardrooms, investors, galas like this. You're a reminder of who he was, not who he is. And I'd hate to find another planner this late in the game. The threat hung in the air, sharp as the saxophone's wail. Zara held her gaze, her chin high. I'm the best at what I do, Miss Pierce. You fire me, you'll regret it. And as for Finn, if you're worried about losing him, maybe you should ask yourself why. Evelyn's face tightened. But before she could reply, a guest called her over, and she swept away, her dress trailing like a warning. Zara leaned against the wall, her heart pounding, the jazz ballad sinking into her bones. Evelyn's words stung, but worse was the truth in them. Finn's world was different, and Zara didn't belong in it, so why did her heart keep pulling her toward him? The gala wound down, guests spilling into the French Quarter for after-parties. Zara stayed behind, checking invoices with Luce, but her mind was elsewhere. She stepped onto a balcony overlooking Bourbon Street, the neon signs below pulsing like a heartbeat, the air thick with the hum of jazz and the chatter of revelers. She was sipping a Sazerac, the rye whiskey sharp on her tongue when Finn found her. His tie loosened his suit jacket slung over one shoulder. Zara, he said, his voice cutting through the street noise. We need to talk. She turned the glass cool in her hand, her blazer unbuttoned to reveal a silk camisole. We've talked enough. Finn, I'm trying to do my job here. He stepped onto the balcony, closing the distance, his presence overwhelming in the cramped space. I heard you spoke to Evelyn. She's upset. and I know why I told her I'm calling off the engagement." Zara's glass froze halfway to her lips, her eyes widening. "You what?" "I can't marry her," he said, his voice raw, his green eyes locked on hers. "Not when every time I close my eyes I see you. Not when I'm funding art centers because of you, dreaming of you, loving you." The words hit like a punch, stealing her breath. The jazz quartet below struck up a new tune. The saxophone's cry sharp and urgent, its notes climbing like a fever. The neon lights bathed Finn's face in red and blue, making him look both fierce and vulnerable. Zara set her glass on the railing, her hands shaking. "You don't get to do this," she said, her voice low but fierce. "You don't get to blow up your life and expect me to catch the pieces." "I'm not asking you to catch anything," he said, stepping closer, his voice drowning out the music. "I'm asking you to see me, Zara. The man I am now, not the idiot who left you." The air crackled the saxophone's wail, rising to a crescendo, its notes a mirror to the storm inside her. Finn was so close now, his breath mingling with hers, the heat of him cutting through the humid night. The crowd below roared, their voices a chaotic backdrop, but the world narrowed to this balcony, this moment. His hand reached for hers, fingers brushing her knuckles, then sliding up her arm, the touch igniting her skin like a match. "Finn," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the music. But she didn't pull away. The saxophone hit a high note, raw and desperate, and Finn's hand cupped her neck, his thumb stroking the pulse point beneath her jaw. The sound of his breath, ragged and quick, filled her ears, drowning out the street noise. He pulled her closer, their bodies pressed together, her camisole clinging to her skin, his shirt rough against her chest. The neon lights pulsed, painting their skin in electric hues, and she felt the strength in his grip, the barely restrained want. "Zara, I need you." He growled, his voice a low vibration against the saxophone's cry. His lips crashed into hers, fierce and demanding the kiss, a collision of hunger and regret. She gasped, the sound swallowed by the music, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed to stop. His tongue teased hers, hot and urgent, and she tasted whiskey and salt, her body arching into his. The crowd's cheers below surged a wild counterpoint to the saxophone's wail, and Finn's hands slid to her waist, fingers digging into her hips, anchoring her against the railing. But Evelyn's face flashed in her mind, her pain, her warning, and Zara broke the kiss, shoving Finn back her chest, heaving. "No," she panted, her voice raw. "You're not free, Finn, and I'm not your fallback plan." His eyes were wild, his breath as ragged as hers. "You're not a fallback. You're everything." "Then prove it," she snapped, grabbing her glass and storming back inside the jazz, chasing her like a ghost. Her lips burned, her body still humming from his touch, but she wouldn't let him break her again, not until he showed her he meant it. Zara threw herself into cleanup, directing staff with a ferocity that made Luce keep her distance. The gala was a success, the donors buzzing about the Gala Arts Center, but Zara felt like she'd been through a war. She slipped away to a quiet street, the quarter's noise fading behind her, and called Malik, needing his voice to ground her Z. "You sound like hell," he said, his tone half teasing, half concerned. "What's going on?" She leaned against a lamppost, the iron cool against her back. "Finn's calling off his engagement. Says he loves me. I don't know what to believe." "Malik," he sighed, the sound crackling through the phone. "Man's got a silver tongue. I'll give him that. But you're Zara Tate, Queen of Savannah, Heart of Steel. Don't let him play you. You're worth more than his promises." Zara nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I know. But what if he's for real this time? Then he'll show it. Malik said. Not with words, not with kisses, with actions. You deserve that chili. She hung up the quarter's lights, blurring through her tears. Finn had shaken her world, but she wasn't ready to trust him, not yet. As she walked back to her hotel, the saxophone's echo lingered, a reminder that love was as dangerous as it was beautiful. The Burlington air was crisp, scented with pine and the faint sweetness of maple syrup, the kind of autumn chill that made you want to burrow into a sweater. Zara Tate stood on the shore of Lake Champlain, her boots sinking into the pebbled beach, the water lapping softly under a sky streaked with crimson and gold. She'd come to Vermont at Finn Carver's invitation, a last-minute trip to attend the launch of his new arts foundation, one that supported minority communities, including a nod to the Gullah heritage she held so dear. She told herself it was professional, a chance to network, to see the fruits of the Gullah Arts Center he'd funded in Savannah. But deep down, she knew it was more. Finn's words in New Orleans, his claim that he'd ended his engagement to Evelyn, had left her reeling, torn between hope and the fear of another heartbreak. Zara. You sure about this? Luce had asked before she boarded the plane, her voice crackling through the phone. Dude's got a track record of bailing. Don't let him sweet-talk you into forgetting that. I'm not forgetting anything, Zara had said, her tone firm. I just need to see if he's for real this time. Now standing by the lake, the forest behind her ablaze with red and orange maples. She wasn't so sure Finn had been radio silent since New Orleans. No texts, no calls, just a formal email inviting her to Burlington. It stung, but it also gave her space to think. She'd spent 6 years rebuilding herself after he left. Could she trust him not to shatter her again? A car horn beeped and Zara turned to see Finn pulling up in a beat-up Jeep, a far cry from the sleek sedans she'd seen him in. He stepped out, his flannel shirt rolled to the elbows, his brown hair tousled by the wind. Zara, he called, his green eyes catching the sunset. Glad you made it? She crossed her arms, her scarf fluttering. Had to see this arts foundation for myself. Carver. Better not be a publicity stunt. He grinned, the kind of smile that used to make her knees weak. No stunts. I promise. Come on, I'll show you around. The Arts Foundation event was held in a converted barn on the outskirts of Burlington, its weathered beams strung with Edison bulbs, the air warm with the scent of cider and wood smoke. Guests milled about, sipping local brews, admiring displays of Gullah basketry and paintings inspired by Southern folklore. Zara moved through the crowd, her navy dress swishing, her gold bangles jingling as she shook hands with donors and artists. Finn was everywhere, talking to a sculptor, laughing with a musician. His ease a stark contrast to the buttoned-up billionaire she'd seen in Savannah. Clara Carver, Finn's mother, found Zara by a display of woven sweetgrass baskets. She was a wiry woman with silver-streaked hair and hands rough from years of gardening. You must be Zara, she said, her Vermont accent warm. Finn's told me about you. Says you're the reason he's doing this. Zara's cheeks heated, but she kept her tone light. He's exaggerating, Mrs. Carver. I just gave him a few ideas. Clara's eyes twinkled. Call me Clara, hon. And don't sell yourself short. My boy's been different since you came back into his life, more like the Finn I raised, not the suit. Chasing stock options. Zara smiled, but her heart twisted. Different how? She wanted to ask, but the event swept her away, a whirlwind of speeches and applause. Finn took the stage, his flannel swapped for a blazer, his voice steady as he announced the foundation's first grant, $1 million to expand the Gullah Arts Center in Savannah, renamed the Maeve Dubois Center after Zara's grandmother. The crowd erupted, but Zara stood frozen, her eyes locked on Finn. He'd done this without telling her, without expecting anything in return. It wasn't just a gesture. It was a commitment to her world. Her roots. After the event, Finn led Zara to a garden near Lake Champlain, a secluded spot where willows drooped over a small stage. A local soul band setting up for a private performance. The sky was clear now, stars pricking through the dusk, the lake a mirror of light. "Thought you'd like this," Finn said, his voice soft. "A little music, a little peace. Reminds me of those nights we'd sneak into Savannah bars pretending we could sing." Zara's lips twitched, the memory bittersweet. "You were terrible, Finn. Still owe me for all the beers I bought to bribe the bartenders." He laughed. The sound low and warm, and gestured to a blanket spread on the grass, a thermos of hot cider waiting. They sat, the band striking up a slow, soulful cover of Etta James at last, the notes floating over the water. Zara sipped the cider, the spice warming her throat, but her eyes were on Finn, searching for the truth behind his actions. "I need to tell you something," he said, setting his cup down, his hands clasped like he was bracing himself. "I stepped down as CEO last month. Took an advisory role instead. No more 80-hour weeks, no more red-eye flights to Singapore. I'm building a life here. Zara. A real one." Her breath caught the weight of his words sinking in. "You quit, Finn. That's your empire. You fought for it. I fought for the wrong thing," he said, his voice steady but raw. "I thought money, power, all that would make me whole. But it didn't. You did. And I'm done chasing shadows." Zara's heart pounded, the band's melody weaving through her thoughts. She wanted to believe him, but fear held her back, a cold knot in her chest. "What about Evelyn?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You said you ended it, but how do I know you won't change your mind again?" Finn reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to her, his fingers brushing hers, a fleeting warmth. It was a deed stamped and official for a plot of land in Savannah. "I bought this for the Maeve Dubois Center," he said. "Not just the grant, but a permanent home. It's in your grandmother's name, Zara, because she raised you, and you raised me to be better. I'm not asking you to trust me yet. I'm asking for a chance to earn it." Tears pricked her eyes, the paper trembling in her hands. This wasn't just money. It was a piece of her soul, her heritage, a dream she'd whispered to him on long Savannah nights. She looked at him, the starlight catching the lines of his face, and saw not the billionaire, not the boy who'd left her, but a man trying to make things right. The band shifted to a slower song, the singer's voice, a velvet caress, and Finn stood offering his hand. "Dance with me, Zara," he said, his eyes soft but intense. "Just one song." She hesitated, then took his hand, her fingers sliding into his, the warmth of his palm grounding her. They moved to the grass, the music wrapping around them, and he pulled her close, his hands settling on her waist, the navy dress soft under his fingers. The starlight bathed them, a silver glow that made the world feel infinite, and Zara felt the slow, deliberate press of his hand, his thumb tracing circles on her lower back. Each movement, a quiet promise. "Finn," she murmured, her voice catching as his other hand cupped her neck, his fingers threading into her curls, gentle but firm. The texture of his flannel brushed her arm, rough against her smooth skin, and she shivered, not from the cold, but from the way his touch ignited her. His breath was warm against her temple, a slow exhale that matched the rhythm of the song, and she felt the steady beat of his heart, where her hand rested on his chest, the muscle beneath his shirt taut and familiar. "You're everything," he whispered, his lips grazing her ear, the words sinking into her like roots. His hand slid up her spine, fingers splaying across her bare shoulder blades, the contact sending a pulse of heat through her. She tilted her head, her cheek brushing his jaw, the faint stubble, a delicious friction, and their bodies swayed, pressed so close she could feel every line of him, every shift of muscle. The starlight flickered, the lake's reflection dancing in his eyes, and she wanted to lose herself in this moment in him. Her fingers tightened on his shirt, tugging him closer, and his hand moved to her hip, gripping with a quiet intensity that made her breath hitch. The music swelled, the singer's voice soaring, but all Zara heard was the soft sound of Finn's breath, the rustle of her dress against his flannel, the thud of her own heart. She leaned in, their foreheads touching, and his lips hovered over hers, a heartbeat away, the promise of a kiss, heavy in the air. But the memory of his departure, the years of pain held her back. She stepped out of his arms, the blanket soft under her boots, her eyes wet. "I want to believe you, Finn," she said, her voice trembling. "But I need time. I need to know this is real." He nodded, his hands falling to his sides, his expression a mix of hope and resolve. "I'll wait, Zara, as long as it takes." They walked back to the barn in silence, the music fading behind them, the stars a canopy above. Clara was waiting, her smile warm as she hugged Zara goodbye. "You're good for him, hon," she whispered. "Don't be too hard on the boy." Zara managed to smile, but her mind was a storm. Finn's actions, the foundation, the deed, the life he was building, were proof he'd changed, but trust was a fragile thing, and hers had been broken before. She boarded her flight home, the Vermont landscape fading below, and called Malik, needing his clarity. "Sounds like he's putting in the work," Malik said, his voice crackling through the phone. "But you gotta ask yourself, Z, is he worth the risk? You're Zara Tate, queen of everything. Don't settle for less than you deserve." "I won't," she said, her voice steady. As the plane descended into Savannah, she clutched the deed, its weight a reminder of Finn's promise. She wasn't ready to say yes, but for the first time, she wasn't saying no. The Burlington night was alive with stars, their light spilling over Lake Champlain like a promise written in silver. Zara Tate stood in a garden near the water, her white silk dress shimmering under a canopy of fairy lights, the soft hum of a soul-folk band filling the air. It was her wedding day, 6 months after Finn Carver had danced with her in the same garden, his hands on her waist, his words a vow to earn her trust. She'd spent those months watching him prove it, showing up for her dreams, for the life they were building together. Now, as she adjusted the pearl hairpin her Grandma Maeve had given her, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. The garden was small, intimate, nothing like the lavish wedding Zara had planned for clients. Willow trees drooped over wooden benches, their leaves rustling in the autumn breeze, and the lake reflected the glow of lanterns hung from the branches. Guests, family, friends, a few artists from the Gala Arts Center, chatted over plates of maple-glazed salmon and glasses of local cider. Luz Rivera, radiant in a gold dress, was laughing with Malik Jordan, their new romance adding a spark to the night. Clara Carver. Finn's mother moved among the tables, her silver hair catching the light as she shared stories of Finn's childhood. Maeve Dubois. Zara's grandmother sat near the stage, her hands folded over a sweetgrass basket she'd woven for the occasion. She caught Zara's eye and winked, her voice warm as she leaned over. "You look like a queen baby girl. Your mama would be so proud." Zara's throat tightened, her fingers brushing the pearl hairpin. "Thanks, Grandma. I just hope I'm doing this right." Maeve's laugh was rich, her eyes crinkling. "Love ain't about doing it right. It's about doing it true. And that boy loves you. True." Zara smiled, her gaze drifting to Finn, who stood under a wooden arch draped with wildflowers. He was in a navy suit, no tie, his brown hair curling at the edges, his green eyes fixed on her, like she was the only star in the sky. She took a breath, the music shifting to a soft instrumental, and stepped forward, her dress whispering against the grass. The ceremony was simple, their vows handwritten each word, a thread weaving their past into their future. Finn went first, his voice steady but thick with emotion. Zara, 6 years ago. I thought I knew what I wanted. I was wrong. You showed me what matters. Love roots, showing up even when it's hard. Success isn't a bank account or a title. It's waking up beside you, building a life where we both shine. I promise to choose you every day, no matter what. Zara's eyes stung, but she held his gaze, her voice clear. Finn, you broke my heart once, and I built myself back stronger. But you came back, not with words, but with actions, giving my heritage a home, giving me a reason to trust again. I promise to love you, to challenge you, to be your partner, not your shadow. We're equals, always. The officiant, a local poet with a voice like honey, pronounced them married, and the guests erupted in cheers. Finn pulled Zara close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both tender and fierce, his hands cupping her face, her fingers tangling in his hair. The fairy lights twinkled above the lake's reflection, a mirror of their joy, and for a moment, the world was just them, sealed in starlight. The reception was a celebration of their worlds colliding. Maeve and Clara took the stage, their voices blending in a soul-folk duet, a gala spiritual woven with a Vermont ballad, a symbol of the families now joined. Guests danced on the grass, Malik spinning loose under the lanterns, their laughter infectious. A surprise arrived midway through the night, a bouquet of magnolias with a note from Evelyn Pierce, who'd moved to Paris and found love with a chef. Wishing you joy, Zara and Finn. Thank you for showing me what love should be. Zara read it, her heart light, grateful for Evelyn's grace. As the band kicked into a lively cover of Al Green's Love and Happiness, Finn pulled Zara onto the dance floor, his hands on her hips, her arms looping around his neck. The music pulsed, the guests clapping along, but Zara's world narrowed to Finn, the warmth of his smile, the strength of his hands, the way his eyes held hers like a vow. You're stuck with me now. Mrs. Carver. He teased, his voice low against her ear. She grinned, her bangles jingling as she swayed. Better keep up, Mr. Carver. I'm not slowing down for you. He laughed, spinning her under the lights, and the crowd cheered, the night alive with possibility. Zara felt it then, a love that wasn't just passion or promises, but a foundation built on trust, respect, and the hard-won lessons of their past. Later, as the guests drifted to bonfires by the lake, Finn led Zara to a small cabin nestled in the woods, their honeymoon retreat for the night. The cabin was simple, its cedar walls warmed by a single lantern, the windows open to the lake's gentle lapping. Moonlight poured through, silvering the hardwood floor, casting their shadows in soft, fluid lines. Zara kicked off her heels, the silk dress clinging to her curves, and turned to Finn, who'd shed his jacket, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. Mrs. Carver, he said, his voice a low rumble, his eyes glinting in the lunar glow. He crossed the room, his footsteps soft, and stopped before her, his hands hovering at her waist, giving her space to choose. She stepped into him, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, the faint stubble, a delicious friction under her touch. The moonlight bathed them, turning her skin to alabaster, his to bronze, and she felt the heat of him, the steady pulse of his presence. Finn, she whispered, her voice a melody against the lake's quiet song. His hands settled on her hips, firm but gentle, his fingers slipping under the silk to find the soft skin beneath. The contact was electric, a spark that raced through her, and she arched into him, her breath catching as his thumbs brushed the curve of her waist, slow and deliberate, like he was mapping her body by memory. The lantern flickered its golden light, mingling with the moon's silver, and Finn's lips found her neck, a hot, open-mouthed kiss that drew a soft moan from her. The sound was swallowed by the night, but it spurred him on, his hands sliding up her back, fingers splaying across her shoulder blades, the silk dress a whisper against his calluses. "Zara," he murmured, his voice rough with want, and he kissed her deep and hungry, his tongue teasing hers in a dance that felt like fire. She responded, her hands roaming his chest, unbuttoning his shirt to feel the warmth of his skin, the hard planes of muscle beneath. The moonlight caught the lines of his collarbone, painting him in stark relief, and she traced it with her lips, tasting salt and cedar, her teeth grazing just enough to make him groan. His hands tightened on her hips, pulling her flush against him, and she felt the strength of him, the urgency, the love that burned brighter than the stars outside. They stumbled to the bed, a simple frame draped with linen, and sank onto it, the mattress creaking softly. The moonlight followed, pooling on their entwined bodies, and Finn's hands were everywhere, her thighs, her waist, her hair, each touch, a vow, each kiss, a seal. Her dress slipped from one shoulder, the silk pooling at her elbow, and he kissed the exposed skin, his breath hot, his lips reverent. She arched beneath him, her nails digging into his shoulders, leaving faint marks in the silver light, and the world dissolved into sensation, the rustle of fabric, the thud of their hearts, the lake's distant lullaby. But as their breaths grew ragged, Zara slowed her hand on his chest, her eyes locking with his. "This is forever." "Finn," she said, her voice steady despite the heat. "No turning back forever." He echoed, his hand cupping her face, the moonlight glinting in his eyes. "I'm yours, Zara. Always." They sank back the moment, stretching intimate and unspoken, the moonlight their only witness. The scene faded to the sound of the lake, the promise of their love sealed in the quiet of the night. The next morning, Zara and Finn sat by the lake wrapped in a blanket, the dawn painting the sky in pinks and golds. They sipped coffee, their hands entwined, and talked about the future, the Maeve Dubois Center, their plans to split time between Savannah and Burlington, the life they'd build together. Malik and Luce joined them, their teasing banter, a reminder of the family they'd forged. A letter from Evelyn read later, confirmed her happiness, a final thread tied. Zara leaned against Finn, the blanket soft against her skin, and looked at the stars fading into the morning. Their love wasn't perfect. It was scarred, mended, stronger for it. They'd lost each other once, but they'd found their way back, not by chance, but by choice, by work, by love that refused to die. She thought of Maeve's words. Love ain't about doing it right. It's about doing it true. And this she knew was true. As the sun rose, casting its light over the lake, Zara felt whole. Not because Finn had fixed her, but because they'd built something new together. Some loves, she realized, were worth the risk, worth the fight, worth every star in the sky. If Zara and Finn's journey made your heart skip a beat, hit that like button and share your own second chance love story in the comments. Subscribe to catch more tales of passion and redemption, y'all, because who doesn't believe in stars that lead you home?